It's Monday and the maiden voyage of Middays in Raystown Country with Greg Banks. Hey, welcome to it here on the airnetwork.net. Welcome in on this Monday. It's February 29th, 2016, Leap Day. What's the significance of Leap Day? Hey, Google it. That's probably the best way to handle that. Meanwhile, I do know for a fact that this was the day many, many years ago, oh hell, decades ago, that we used to ask the girls out to dance. Sadie Hawkins Day. And somewhere in my memory, I think I remember we could actually ask a girl to marry us. Or, no, the girl could ask us to marry them, right? All right. So that's what today is, the 29th. I saw online where McDonald's passed out a coupon that was good for a free burger on February 30th. Hey, well, who's fooled here? There is no 30th in February. All right, so get it right. Check it out. Monday, kind of cloudy, rainy around Raystown Country. Welcome to the debut of Middays in Raystown Country, as we mentioned, on the airnetwork.net. We've been around for a long time. Where you've been. We have been actually operating out of the Johnstown region for many years, doing high school sports, live broadcasts. In addition to that, we did a former talk show. Woo. We got run out of town on that one. No, not really. Had some significant issues, topics that we talked about, socioeconomic, racial, political. We talked about promoting businesses, organizations, and we'll do that here in Huntington, Pennsylvania. Let me tell you a little bit about Huntington, my hometown. I left here about 43 years ago, going into the broadcast industry. Never really got a chance to work in Huntington, although there was that time in the early 80s. I came back actually living in Altoona and worked a radio station. Many of you may remember if you're from the Huntington County area. There was actually another radio station, an AM station, that existed on Raystown, actually Fairgrounds Road. It was WQRO. It was actually owned by Congressman Bud Schuster at the time and some local people. They asked me to come down and help them program this little old AM. It was a daytime station. You can only pick it up during the daytime. Matter of fact, they went off the air at sunset. And when you use that kind of business model, it doesn't work long. And it didn't work long. I think about 5 years, maybe 8 years. One thing that you have to have is a nighttime signal, which unfortunately in Huntington, there are no really good nighttime signals, because if you're on AM, you lower the power, the big boys come in, the FMs really don't cover the area that much. And then out of nowhere, somebody invented the internet. Oh, Al Gore, okay. Or was he, did he, let me think back here, just to get it straight. One of those guys invented the internet. Somebody else invented climate control. That's right. So there we are. We have the internet. We now get online. We send up our videos. We do that Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Oh, we have it all. But do we really? So we'll talk about some things in Huntington County that are germane to your life. One thing I've done over the last 40 years is really promoted Huntington County, my hometown. I'd bring visitors back so that we could imbibe and enjoy not just the lake, but all the historic locations, land sites. And you have to forgive me. I stayed up late last night after watching the Oscars and had to do some extra work because not only am I doing this radio gig, I do a lot of regional commercials on TV and radio, and I just wanted to make sure I had all my work done before I could come in here and play on this talk show, Middays in Raystown Country. So we used to bring people down here, and I would always promote Huntington County, because that's the area I grew up. I lived here 18 years, and a lot of these folks, believe it or not, really embraced Huntington County in that they love to come back. They were spending their money, and they continue to do that to this day. So we have these landmarks that we would go to, like yesterday. We had such beautiful weather yesterday. I don't know if you were out and about, but it was beautiful to the point where I actually ran around in shorts. I did some quick trips down 22 towards Mount Union to see some folks. And when I went past 1,000 steps there, that place was packed. I don't know if everybody was trying to get water down there, at the springs, or if they were enjoying the day walking up and down the steps. But that's just one landmark that we have. We have museums. Of course, I'll tell you a story about the library recently. Had a chance to enjoy the library. First thing I did when I got back home, actually in August, was get my library card. Because reading is an important factor in my life. Anyhow, so that's who I am. Left the area, like I said, in the early 70s, went to work in the Altoona radio market, and then I moved into television. Who'd have thunk? Little guy like me on television. And the story there was a good friend of mine, and probably yours back then. Big John Riley became ill, and they asked me if I would take over his morning talk show, which I did. Of course, you may remember me as Steve Austin. Back in those days, that was a pseudonym that I used in radio. They wouldn't let me, kind of leave that name alone in television because, no, they know you as Steve, even though everybody else knew me as Greg Banks from Huntington or just Poncho. So we'll be here Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. If you like to get involved, maybe you have an opinion on something. Perhaps you've got something you'd like to complain about. You can rant. Hey, you can call us. 814-242-4845. That's 814-242-4845. And our lines are open live every day from 10 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday. Also, want to keep in mind that we have rebroadcast of the show. It's sort of like appointment listening, if you will. If you miss it live, you can always tune in to theairnetwork.net. Just click on that little button that says tune in and listen to programming from 2 until 4, again from 10 until midnight. So we rebroadcast from 2 to 4 and 10 to midnight. Don't forget, tonight, Monday night, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Monday Night Sports Talk is on the air from 7 to 8 p.m. It's live. That's when we get together and talk about regional sports, national sports with my good friends Dave Shannon, who's from the Altoona region, in radio for many years. Also, Chad States from Huntington. We used to get Jeff Speck involved, but Jeff got this gig working at Honey FM, and so he's kind of a busy guy these days, but we'll try to get him back in to do the live talk show with us. And Jimmy Ty, from time to time, joins us from the Philadelphia area, and it's all cool because we use the technology, Skype. Now, if you have Skype, you can also jump on Skype during our broadcast each day and kind of chime in. All you do is go to Skype, make a contact at GBanks3. That's GBanks3. We accept your contact, and we put you on the air. Simple as that. Couple of things. Last night, interesting Oscars out of Hollywood. I sort of watched it and anticipated it with bated breath only because a couple of factors. One, I wanted to see how Chris Rock would handle the opening monologue. Now, there's some question in many minds this morning as Twitter is blown up and also Facebook and some of the other social locations about Chris Rock and his opening monologue. There was a controversy about African Americans not being nominated for awards. And, of course, a lot of folks canceled their plans, protested. People like Will Smith and his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. In addition to that, Spike Lee. And I think he handled it graciously. Talking about Chris Rock, I think he did the best he could do. Like he said, though, in his monologue, which was kind of funny, but it makes sense, especially if you're trying to make a living. There aren't a lot of movies to do, regardless. How many movies come out really every year? And unless you produce them yourselves, or, let's face it, we have so many options. Rather than just going to the movie theaters, we've got DVD, we've got online, we got this Netflix thing now. I love that. Netflix. I'm able to watch all these documentaries that I fall in love with, and I love documentaries. But so Chris Rock had the option to come on and say nothing. But, of course, he made mention of it. He made light of it. And the one parody they did, the one that was filmed earlier with Whoopi Goldberg and the Mop, and if you haven't seen this, just go to YouTube or somewhere and take a look at it. That was funny. And the Danish girl, Okay, one of the prolific movies released all in the past year. And a lot of these movies we'll never see. Let's face it, they're just not coming to the Clifton Five. My good friend Dave Peoples explained to me years ago, who owns the Clifton Five, he and I graduated high school together, that it's difficult at best bringing, well, matter of fact, you don't bring artsy movies to Huntington. You know, it just doesn't appeal to the masses. If you look at the broad spectrum, we'll get into demographics and also psychographics, you know, and all those things that business people need to know when trying to peddle their wares to the audience. You know, it's just not going to play to the folks in Huntington. The artsy movies like The Danish Girl and some of the other movies that we watched last night, especially some of the shorts. But having said that, you need to make it a point to get somewhere, for instance, State College. What's that, 30 miles away from the Huntington area? Yeah, you get to State College and you watch these at the State Theater, which they've opened up recently in the last couple of years, and they'll show a lot of these shorts, documentaries, and things that you're not going to see on the big screen. You may go to Altoona, to the new Cineplex there. What have they got, like 12 theaters now? Not at Park Hills, but the new one by the Convention Center. So anyhow, you got to get and see these movies. So as the controversy was stirred up a little bit last night, again, generated by Chris Rock, I think it was important that he at least make mention of it, but then it got tired. It looked like he was overcompensating. Not sure if he wrote his own script, and in many cases they don't. I mean, he's dealing with Hollywood. You know, so some out-of-work writer, his job was to work with a staff of people to write these jokes and write the monologue, people having difficulties at best reading the teleprompters. And, you know, that's just not their job. Their jobs are to act or to give us comedic relief, if you will. Kevin Hart was kind of funny. He was sort of one of those dudes that if, something goes down, he was letting you know right off the bat, hey, I got nothing to do with this. You know, I want to keep it positive. It's like, you know. And so that was important in the Oscars last night. So what's your opinion? 242-4845. Give us a call, 814-242-4845. Did you enjoy the Oscars in Hollywood? I got to be quite honest. I had a SAG card 35 years ago and an AFTRA card, which allowed me to join the union. And I had an agent, you know, working out of the L.A. area. At one time in my radio career, you had to have a union card. You get these SAG cards, Screen Actor Guild, or AFTRA, American Federation of Television Radio Announcers, and the idea is you get an agent, somebody gets you a gig. All right, so maybe the gig is doing animation, and you become the voice of this character in a movie. Well, there aren't a lot of those gigs available. And now what happens is they usually tend to have people come in and audition, or they say, hey, because remember, you have a network of people that you're working with in Hollywood. You know, people that you've grown up with in the industry, per se. You know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. That's how it works in real life. And I didn't know that, of course, at 17, 18, when you're living in Huntington, you basically knew everybody. But you get out in the real world, and that's the kicker. Ooh, it's a big real world. And you realize people are connected, and that's how you get the gigs. Many times. You know, and I found out, and you probably have in your lifetime as well, that it's not always what you know, but it's who you know. And having said that, in many instances, as you go throughout life, and I tell my children this all the time, of course, they're grown now, it's like, dude, do the best you can where you are, and don't be anxious. You know, it's a journey. You know, this is not a race or a sprint. This is a marathon. And, you know, sometimes it goes back to emotions. It goes back to how you treat other people, whether or not you survive in this big old world. And so, you know, my world now encompasses pretty much Huntington County. Now, 43 years ago when I left, it was a totally different place. We had, totally different ideas. And as I said, you get out to the real world, and you kind of get a different perspective on life, and you get things all mucked up because people begin to think one way, you think another way, and then you also understand that you have shared responsibilities as you grow older. You know, people say oftentimes, why is it that I enjoy my grandchildren much more than I did my children? Duh. Dude, you were probably out working your ass off. Oh, you were doing that 40 to 60 hours a week. You know what I mean? And your kids were important, don't get me wrong. And mom, you know, she decided to go out and work as well. And maybe you looked at your school or your parents as babysitters. And so you really didn't have as much a hand in perhaps raising your children as you would have liked to. Now, having said that, fast forward 30, 40 years, when your children begin to have children, now you have a little bit more time. Now you've come to the consensus that, you know, all this crap that I've gotten over the years, all these cars and the big house and got money in the bank or whatever the case might be, just isn't as important. Because now you're getting closer to the edge. You know, now you're getting closer to the end. You can look back pretty quickly, but you ain't got a whole lot of time. Whether it's 20, 30 years, it's going to go fast because you've seen how fast it's gone already. So that's why you engage and embrace and you have some extra time with the grandchildren. You have more time to spend with them, and that's a pleasure. You know, that's certainly indeed a gift, and it's a gift from God. So having said that, that's what we do. We are giving you a platform to be a part of something big. Huntingdon County never really had a lot of talk shows. If you think back to the last talk show that we had, and forgive me if there was a span that I don't remember in Huntingdon County. After all, it was going for 43 years, you know, give or take, come home and visit. But the last talk show I remember, wasn't it Coffee Time? Remember Joe McMean did Coffee Time? And, you know, Joe, dear lover, God love her, she didn't get involved in any controversy. Everything was all positive. It was all good. And I would like this show to kind of, in many ways, celebrate the life of those who have gone before us, those people that would have been my mentor had I been in the industry in small-town America. One thing I've said about Huntingdon, though, it certainly is one of the coolest towns in America. If you listen to the Air Network at any given time, and this may be new to you, you can get us online at theairnetwork.net. You can also get us on your mobile phone. All you have to do is go to TuneIn, download that free app, and just search for the Air Network. THEA.I.R.network. Simple as that, man. Yeah. You know, and that's the other thing. I'm somewhat computer literate. Had to get involved in computers back in 1993. I remember being at the radio station in Johnstown when they announced that we are going to use computers for our programming, in which all the music will be put in these computers along with commercials, and all you have to do is attach your voice to it. Hello? That doesn't sound like a good deal. Now, that was 1993. I wonder what these guys are up to. Well, if you remember, in 1994, something happened during the Clinton administration called consolidation. At one given time, radio stations were only able to own one or two in your market. Huntingdon, a good example. You could only own a couple of these. Which the Biddle family, if you remember, WHUN, they owned an AM and an FM and the newspaper. And you couldn't own much more. Well, all of a sudden, consolidation takes hold, and Clinton and the FCC, through their brilliance, decides, well, let's open this up and let the big guys just buy up all these stations. Well, didn't they think that maybe you would squash the voice of the little guy if you allowed that to happen? And that these people, as business people, would also look for an effective, efficient way to run these radio stations like nobody would be home, because you could put your voice in a computer somewhere in Altoona and send it to Huntingdon. Hence, something goes down at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's nobody home. Oh, let's say there's a wreck on 4th Street. Oh, yeah, train just explodes, whatever the case might be. Or like Altoona, just trains leaving the track. And there's no way out, because not only did it crash at 4th Street, but it also went over the arch they're on Penn Street. So there's no other way out unless you go to East Penn Street, which is towards Mount Union, get on 22, and then, it could be amazing. Well, guess what? There's not been anybody home in over 25 years because of consolidation. So if anything goes down in our region, nobody's going to know about it till the next morning. Or if you have cable, because we can't use the antennas or the little rabbit ears anymore to watch television because we're so advanced now as a society. Well, if something goes down, you're going to have to tune in to Channel 10 or Channel 6, Altoona or Johnstown, to find out what happened in your own backyard. Hence, middays in Raystown country. At least for 2 hours a day, we can tell you what's for real, what's happening in Huntingdon County. There are people that we will be talking to. Matter of fact, I have a list of people on my wish list here that I certainly will want to talk to in the coming weeks. But again, it's a process. The product, content of what we put on the air network is important, but only if it's important to you, our audience. And so who are we going to talk to? We want to talk to folks that are involved in, the community. Like, for instance, Ryan Gibney. We're going to have her on soon. She'll talk about re-envision Huntingdon. What is the real vision for Huntingdon going forward? What ideas do you have on bringing people back downtown Huntingdon, just like it was back in the old 50s and 60s? Remember when we would go downtown after work, everybody would get cleaned up. We'd go to Miller's department store. We would go to Savado's, Posers, Dollinger's. I could go on and on. You remember, if you're still around, if you're younger, and I hate to say, you can't Google it, talk to somebody over 50, okay? Because they'll tell you the way it used to be. Now, we're not going to be stuck in some kind of time capsule here moving forward with Huntingdon, because it's going to grow whether we want it to or not. It has grown since I left here 43 years ago. Everything moved out on the highway. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why there are 4 or 5 restaurants together on a highway. That's why they do that, because not everybody's going to get all the same business. Not everybody's going to, you get a burger. Now I can get a taco. Oh, I might want to get a pizza. Well, where do I go? But there are such niches in downtown Huntingdon. And forgive me if I say Johnstown. I was there over 30 years. But there are so many niches and interesting, unique little shops in downtown Huntingdon that there's a vision. And Ryan Gibney is one of those folks I want to talk to about re-envision Huntingdon. Now, there's some other gems. One of the places, and I've always said this and always visited this special place in my life. As a youngster, I spent most of my days there. It was in my backyard. Over the fence, down the hill, Stone Creek River was in my backyard. All the baseball fields, the swimming pool. Do you remember back in the 60s and 70s, before the lake became the lake? How many towels were spread out in the outfield at the City League field, there at Blair's Field, because we had a community swimming pool. It was unreal. That's where you ran. Hey, that's where I made most of my money as a kid, picking up pop bottles. Hell yeah, 2 cents a bottle. Did you realize I was like a millionaire? If I collected, maybe 50 cents a week, I was the candy kid. I was the kid everybody came to. Hey, dude, can you buy me some candy? Hell yeah, let's go to the bathhouse. Because you could buy candy for 2, 3 cents, maybe a nickel. But if you collected 10, 20 pop bottles, it's like, man, I wish somebody would have said to me, Greg, if you saved a nickel every time you found a pop bottle, until the end of your life, you'd be a multi-billionaire. Of course, we weren't thinking like that back then. Albeit, there are people that took advantage of the situation and they moved into another genre, if you will, becoming entrepreneurs, and it all started down at Stone Creek. Now, the other thing is we fished down there, too. So that gem I'm talking about is Blair's Park. So soon I will have somebody from the Park and Road Association coming on the air with me so we can talk about and promote Blair's Park. And not only that, there again, they have a vision. Back in 1897, God love him, J.C. Blair and his wife, Kate Fisher Blair, donated that park where the chapel is in the eastern part of Huntington there on Penn Street, right off of Penn Street, that beautiful park. And it has come into disarray over the last few years, the walls falling down, and there are some problems. But the Park and Road Association is trying to address those problems, and they need your help. And so we're going to have some of those folks come on the air with us and talk about what it is we can do to help them revitalize that park. And I spent a lot of days in that park, and I'm going to tell you what, and I've always said, and it's spoken among us, those of us who grew up down there. And remember, there was a baby boom back in the 50s and 60s, so there was hundreds of kids that took advantage of Blair's Field and Blair's Park. But if those trees could talk, and those are the same trees that have been there probably since the 1800s, if they could only talk, some of y'all would just be getting out of jail. It's midday in Raystown country. Greg Banks, welcome to it. Where you been? We'll be here Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. Just a little chat with you goes a long way, and you can call us 814-242-4845. That's 814-242-4845. You can also email us if you have a topic of discussion that you'd like us to broach, maybe an issue in the area. And I don't want to get real political, but we do have an election coming up in the legislative district. And we'll talk with some of those candidates on the air. We're going to at least make the offer to them and invite them, and we'll call the ones out that don't accept the invitation. We also setting up a public forum where we'll be able to go live and have all the players in the room at the same time. But you can email us at greg@theairnetwork.net. Simply greg@theairnetwork.net. Once you get moving in a show like this, it's very simple. It's very easy. You do a little homework. You do a little research. I'm still at that stage, today on the 29th of February, 2016, where I'm still kind of getting a feeling of the area again. It's been a while. Things have changed. There are different faces here. You got to remember, a lot of these dudes and women that I run into now, heaven forbid, I never thought about this, because, everybody thinks you're going to stay young forever. You run into them at a local store, and they greet you. And my nickname at the time was Poncho. Everybody in Huntington had a nickname of sorts, but mine was Poncho. And so when I go to these stores and somebody says, Poncho, and I go over and greet them, maybe with a handshake, then I have to ask them the question, who are you? Now, it's not like I have early onslaught Alzheimer, and it's just like, dude, I don't even remember what I did yesterday. So, and we've all changed. You got to remember, when we were in school, let's say at 16, 17 years old, maybe we hung out in school all the time because I was in a band, and we'll talk about that too. The reality is, now you have no hair. Your hair is now gray, and you have a beard, and you're wearing glasses. And I can't remember you. It's not like I forgot you, because all you have to do is tell me who you are, and now all of a sudden it comes back. But some people they get a little upset when I say, hey, who are you? Don't you remember me? Well, listen, dude, how many little guys my size were running around when we were all coming up? You could remember me, but I can't remember you. Okay? There were fewer little guys than there were big guys. Hell, everybody was big back when I was younger. So anyhow, don't be offended if I run into you and I don't know who you are and I ask you, hey, who are you? Because I really need to know. We've got some events coming up, by the way, and as we go through this whole process of middays in Raystown country, weekdays from 10 to noon live. And if you like to, you can drop us a email greg@theairnetwork.net and tell us what you're doing. You can send your group's organization event. Maybe you have a schedule of events coming up. Just send it to greg@theairnetwork.net. We will promote it. If you like to, you can even call us up, 814-242-4845. That's 814-242-4845. Having said that, coming up May 26th, Swigert Museum. And you know where that is if you're in the area, but if you're outside listening and you're in Altoona, let's say my friends in Johnstown listening, the museum sits right on East 22, Route 22. You have to go through Mill Creek, through Huntington, through Mill Creek, and you'll see it to your left as you're heading east towards Mount Union. May 26th is when the museum opens for the 2016 season. All right, they always have a great program or two around Memorial Day. This year they do have one slated for May 30th. That's at Swigert Museum. If you need to get in touch with those folks down there at Swigert Museum to find out how you might get involved or what's coming up, give Betty a call at 814-643-2024. That's 814-643-2024. We have aligned ourselves with some people who have been gracious enough to want to support the show. That's how it goes from the get-go. I think, and I appreciate the fact that they believe in us. They've listened to us maybe in the past. They like the fact that we do Huntington Bearcat sports, for instance. You might not have known that, but we did basketball, boys and girls this season, a few games, and we did wrestling. And what a season they're having. John Mikett and the Huntington Bearcats. For all intents and purposes, the basketball season is over, but coming up this weekend at Canon McMillan High School, think about this. 8 Huntington Bearcat wrestlers go into the regionals. Now, the regionals is the last stop before the state championship. And Coach John Mikett has gotten 8 of his boys into the regionals at Canon Mac High School coming up this Saturday. We'll talk about that coming up tonight on Sports Talk from 7 to 8 p.m. And matter of fact, if I can kind of reach out to Coach Mikett tonight, we'll get him on the air with us and ask him about the upcoming matches and, of course, how he sees his boys faring at the regionals coming up this Saturday. Now, having said that, we do high school sports, and it's kind of cool because what's cool about it, as we started doing sports in Johnstown years ago, we did the Johnstown Trojans, Forest Hills Rangers. We had about 7 school districts that we put on TV every week on Atlantic Broadband. That'd be like your Comcast here. Atlantic Broadband was the regional cable company in Altoona and Johnstown. And I had the pleasure of being a producer-director with Atlantic Broadband for over 7 years as a full-time gig. Man, what a good company they were to work for. I loved it because they gave me the opportunity to put our kids on TV each week. And they bought into an idea that I had started actually about 15 years ago. So we'd been doing it for like 17 years, and then they just gave me this full-time gig. Never had to go to the office, man. I could work out of my house, and they send me these big checks. Not really, but I mean, they were big checks, but I'd take them to the bank. But the reality is we spotlighted our kids, which was cool. And I said, we need to do that in Huntington, because we never had that when I was wrestling back in the old 70s, 1970, 71, for Mr. Reese, who was the high school wrestling coach at the time. We never got on radio. I don't even know. I think the football team did get on radio back in the 60s and 70s, because I remember Terry Bittner doing the games along with George German, maybe Bill German and those guys. Hell, even Juniata College got football games on the radio at one time. Well, that's what we did starting this winter. Chad States and Jeff Speck did a couple of the boys and girls basketball games. And Chad did all the wrestling matches that we had on the air. You can always go to our website and pull down a podcast of any of those broadcasts and listen to those. And it's kind of cool because the kids can do that as well. And so Chad just did the District 6 AA wrestling tournament out of Altoona last weekend, or not this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, in which Greg Wyckoff was inducted into the District 6 Hall of Fame, Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it's incredible because I think now Huntington has like 3 or 4 people maybe, if not 5, in District 6 Hall of Fame. And that's a prestigious award to have. I mean, that's something that you can tell your kids and your grandkids. And so that's a part of my pride. I'm a Bearcat forever. And so, it was cool when I was able to say, hey, well, I own it. Let's do this, man. Yeah, let's put our kids on the air like they do in Johnstown and like they were doing in Altoona. Albeit it's different transmission nowadays because radio is kind of waning. Terrestrial radio, everybody's gravitating towards these new technologies, and they're not even new. Because I know people, I don't know anybody right now under the age of maybe 50 that listens to radio as we remember it. And everybody has gravitated to listening to stuff on their phones or maybe in their cars, because there are cars that can pick up the air network, believe it or not, because of Wi-Fi. And that's so cool because we're so mobile. But here's the important factor about doing sports, and where we started the content on the air network with Sports First, and then we added this show, the talk show. We did the sports talk show for a couple of years, is because, believe it or not, we have alum living in North Carolina, also in Alaska, to which I said to somebody that emailed me one night, why in the hell would you move to Alaska from Huntington? But they're there, and they want that connection with their hometown, Huntington. And so they listen in to the sports. Oh, yeah, by the way, we also have some friends listening in Montana from Huntington, believe it or not. Why would you move to Montana? If you want to get near a lake or the mountains, I mean, we have mountains. Of course, they're not as probably large as the ones in Montana, but we have a lake. Cost of living's not that high. But obviously, this particular person met a girl, and they moved to Montana, and that's where they settled. Well, he makes that connection with Huntington every week when he tunes into sports. The biggest problem we have had with moving people over to this technology versus the old radio stations is monetizing it. Making money. How do you make a buck to pay the electric bills? Well, you get support. And one cool thing is this year when we asked for support for our sports broadcast, we actually had a family out of Hershey, Pennsylvania. I won't mention names because they want to remain anonymous, that actually sent money. They actually sent a check and said, Ponch, this is for Bearcat Sports. And so we mention them, and we make mention of them, not specifically, but anonymously, that they have granted us money for these broadcasts. So we just finished up the winter sports season. And thank you to the class of 69 and 72 for donating that money so that we could pay the bills to keep these games on the air. And we're heading into spring sports, and I got to be quite honest, I would love to do high school baseball, a few of their games, and high school softball as well. And I believe, isn't there girls volleyball in the spring? Well, why not do a couple of those games? Why not do high school soccer in the fall? And more importantly, why not do Little League Baseball? When these kids get to the districts, and remember now, back to 1967, Huntington, I believe it was, that year, won their first state championship. Oh, I remember some of the players on that team. And, they went on, actually, those players after Little League Baseball went on to have a pretty decent high school career as well, those that stayed in baseball. But they were the first state championship team out of Huntington. Now, I don't know, maybe Mount Union has had a couple of state championship teams. Maybe Southern Huntington. Well, this show is for everybody. This show is just not for Huntington, but I make reference to Huntington because I know Huntington. And now that I'm back in the groove in the Huntington County area, oh, believe me, I already have my itinerary set up. I'm going to be making so many trips I'll do that trip up 1,000 steps. I'll do that. Because I just never had the time to do it. Now I have the time. And I hear everybody raving about the beauty of that valley once you get to the top. The other thing is I'm a fisherman. And believe me, I will be in the streams, damn near every day. Because I promote that to my friends in Johnstown. They love them coming down here. And matter of fact, there was a book written about fishing on the Juniata River in Mount Union. It was written by a professor out of Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, Jack Daniels, who I had the pleasure of meeting, many years at a book signing. And Jack Daniels is a professor. Actually, he's now retired. But he wrote a book called We Fish. And in that book, and you can Google that or go to Amazon.com, We Fish is a metaphor for tying off to the next generation and about fishing. He would fish with his uncles, his grandparents, and his friends at an old bus down around Kistler, I believe it was, or down around that Beacon Lodge area, Beacon for the Blind. And they would fish there every spring and summer. So they had a little camp, an old dilapidated school bus. And it's not only enlightening, but it was also humorous. So you got to get this book. And matter of fact, I just shared with Jack recently on Facebook that he should make this into a movie. It would be one of those movies that I would certainly love to see just because I knew a lot of the characters that he wrote about in this book, because they were characters from Johnstown who actually would work in the steel mills all week. And these dudes wore suits every day, okay? I mean, you'd see them in Central Park in Johnstown. They'd be in suits, dressed clean. And then they would go do that 11 to 7 or that 3 to 11 at the steel mills in Johnstown. And I understand they would take off their suits and put on the overalls. And then after the end of their shift, they would get a shower and then get back into their suits and drive to Mount Union to go fishing and enjoy those weekends. And they used to hang out at the old Black Elks down there in Mount Union as well. But this is all chronicled in a book called We Fish. And it certainly is a part of our history, our legacy, if you will. And as we depart Black History Month, as we depart today being the last day of Black History Month, people say, well, why would you have Black History, Steve? Well, guess what? The history goes way beyond the Civil War. Oh, yeah. It goes way back into, the days of Pharaoh. That's part of the history, too. So that's significant when you have probably a majority of people, if you go around the world, people of African descent, they pretty much overpopulate the world, but that's the world. All right, so we have different subjects and subcategories. We can go into that, later from a political standpoint, because there are some things happening politically that just are crazy right now. But speaking of which, let's get into some ideas about talk. Today we have a guest coming on. Matter of fact, next hour, we have hooked up with Judy Block-Jones. Judy Block-Jones is a person who is with SNAP, which is a survivors network of those abused by priests. And what's really cool is I spoke to Judy early this morning after midnight, and after Spotlight was named the picture or best picture of the year. And if you're familiar with the movie Spotlight, if you've not seen it yet, you have to see it. And I must admit, I've watched trailers. I don't think it played, no, that movie didn't play in Huntington, to the best of my knowledge, but I'm probably going to have to check that out in Altoona or somewhere. But Spotlight chronicles the abuse of priests against children. And I met Judy probably about 3 years ago. She's come on my talk show in Johnstown several times because Johnstown had a situation just 2 or 3 years ago where it was learned that a former priest who was a trainer at the high school, Bishop McCourt High School, had molested some of the children as he was the phys ed trainer, if you will, or the athletic trainer. He has since died. He committed suicide. But he had actually left a school in Ohio where he had been convicted of molesting children there 25 years ago, I believe it was, or 20 years ago, and then somehow gets into this Johnstown school, and then the revelation is made that he's molested more children. So Judy has been on the front lines of the protesting, and SNAP has been one of those organizations that's been on the front line of these abuses. And man, there are just so many of them. They boggle my mind. And she and I have even talked about how this could happen. And now I understand better. Because if you're a child of the 50s or 60s, and I don't care what religion it was, or whether you're Protestant, Catholic, or whatever, but if something happened in your church, your leader of your church was practically godlike when it came to your parents or your grandparents. And when you made these accusations and you came home and you said, Mom, but Father so-and-so touched me in my private parts, as Judy said, unfortunately, children got slapped by their parents and said, don't you ever say that again. Well, could you imagine somebody carrying that around, that knowledge around for 30, 40, 50 years, and that person now being in their 60s or 70s, or heaven forbid, even in their 80s, and it's never been brought to bear? Well, now we're seeing a lot of cases coming up in the last 10, 20, 30 years. How about that really prolific case out of Altoona that happened to a victim who fought in court and finally found justice? And it wasn't just monetary. This involves emotions. Psychologically, this damages people for the rest of their lives. And in that particular case, that young man also is now dead because his life went into a downward spiral. And as a result, I believe he got into drugs and alcohol. And he just never made it back, and it just destroyed his life. Oh, yeah, so they say, well, yeah, but he was given $1 million, Steve. I don't think there's any compensation. There's not enough compensation in the world once you have been molested. And once you've been utilized or brutalized, as it were. And so we're not getting the names. We're not getting into specifics, but there is a case in Huntingdon County that kind of makes us cringe a little bit. Although, I must admit that the current Monsignor of the diocese is trying to eradicate any kind of allegations. So he's going back in the records for now, and we'll talk to Judy about that coming up after 11 o'clock. About some of these cases are now coming forward. And, these cases just don't happen in the church. These happen every day. These happen in schools. They happen in people's homes. And they had happened in various locations throughout our lifetime. And so we don't, you may want to ignore it. But, those of us that have children, now grandchildren, I don't think we can afford to ignore it. It just be like a warning sign that's coming up. If you know and you have knowledge of it, or you have a bad feeling towards something, you've got to be proactive and nip it in the bud. And so anyhow, as we go through our list of guests and my wish list, Judy's one of those people who I thought maybe we would talk to her later this week. But now, in light of Spotlight being the best picture, according to the Academy Award last night, we figured let's do it now. Let's get her on the air today. Let's talk about what she's been doing. Let's talk about what the organization has brought to the fore. And, she told me an interesting story, and I'll let her share that with you coming up in the next hour about the Vatican and how they seem to hide, and there's actually special enclaves and places where they hide this information, never to bring it to public knowledge, and they can get away with that because they're sort of like a little country unto themselves. The last pope, and I'll ask Judy this again, kind of interesting that he just all of a sudden disappeared. He retired, he resigned. In papal history, I'll get my words straight here. In the history of a pope, I don't remember that ever happening before, although she probably will cite that it happened back in the old 16th century, or maybe, hey, I wasn't around then. But in my lifetime, if you're a pope, you're sort of like a Supreme Court justice, man. You die working. Because these are terms that you get for life. And so for somebody to actually move out of that position and still live, you kind of just resign. That was kind of awkward and odd. And I think she and I spoke to that. In one of the last shows I did last year. when I was doing this talk show in Johnstown. But having said that, Judy Block-Jones from Snap, she'll be joining us coming up in about 10, 15 minutes here on the airnetwork.net. Hey, welcome into Middays in Raystown Country. I want to tell you, last week I had the pleasure of making my way through Huntington. As I said, I moved back to Huntington back in August. Unfortunately, it was kind of bittersweet. I wanted to really make that move about 4 years ago. My brother was ailing with cancer at the time. My father was getting elderly. And I still had a home, and I worked in Johnstown, and I run a media business there, and still have the media business. We're involved in cable production, video production, if you will, voiceovers. We do commercials. And so we created this little business probably over 20 years ago and kept a full-time gig, and finally got to the point where the business just was overwhelming, and I said, you know what, it's time to step aside. I don't like working for other people all the time anyhow. I don't know if I could ever do that again at this point because I've just worked so much on my own. You put together the people you need to in your network and you get it done. You know, that's how that works. And you learn that. And so, basically, I'm a doer. I don't like to talk a lot, although that has been a part of my life and my business. It's the gift that God has given me. I mean, my initials are GAB, Gregory Allen Banks. I was born with the gift of gab. So having said that, you know, God put me in the right position at the right time. And so we moved forward and put these businesses together. But I had a chance to walk through downtown Huntington. And what a joy it is to see all these little shops that are opening up. I plan on coming to Mount Union, matter of fact, this weekend. And speaking of Mount Union, let me just tell you this. There is a lovely lady who I met last year at our Juneteenth celebration. And she's now a part of our organization as we get set for Juneteenth this year on Saturday, June 18th at Portstown Park. And if you've never been there, you've got to check it out. This will be our 7th annual event, and it happens from noon until 8 p.m. It's a day of fellowship. It's a day of education, enlightening. We have our buddy T coming from Johnstown. He does the most delicious barbecue you've ever had. This guy has won awards from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, but he's going to be gracing us with his food on June 18th. So put that down on your calendar. We will have entertainment, we will have educational moments, and we will have raffle tickets where you could win some money. All right, so we'll tell you more about that. But I met this beautiful lady a couple of years ago at one of our events. Her name is Teresa, and God love her. Teresa has this little shop, you know, in Mount Union called Lynn's Nail Salon. It's right there on 25th West Small Street. If you've been in Mount Union, you know where that Choice gas station is. Make a left and head back that alley there. It's near Choice convenience store, right off of Jefferson Street. Well, ladies or guys, because, you know, I'm not beyond maybe getting a pedicure or manicure. I'm not into that because I'm into fishing and stuff, and I know how to use a nail clip, and that's all I need. But if you're one of those metro-type dudes, let's say you're in your 20s to maybe your 40s, and you go clubbing and stuff, and you got to have fine-looking nails, and you got money for that kind of thing, because I used to think only the people that would do that would be like people from Hollywood or maybe a sports star or someone, and women. Well, Lynn said she could hook you up with a pedicure, manicure, and even acrylics. Now, these are things I'm going to learn about because I'm going to stop in and maybe have her do something with my nails. But if you're looking for beautiful nails and healthy hands in a family atmosphere, check out Lynn's Nail Salon. Right there at 25th or 25 West Small Street, Mount Union. It's near Choice convenience store in that alley off of Jefferson Street. Their hours, by the way, are by appointment. Okay, Monday through Friday, even Saturday. So call Lynn's Nail Salon at 542-5418. That's 542-5418. And tell them that Greg sent you from Middays in Raystown Country. As we mentioned, we're here live Monday through Friday from 10 to noon. It's not a race. It's a marathon. Things will come up. Things will happen. We want you to be a part of what's happening. We want you to be a part of engaging in the conversation. From time to time, I'll look over and I'll check my Skype. So if you'd like to Skype us, make a contact to Greg Banks 3. Matter of fact, let's pull up Skype right now. I want to do a Skype test here on the air. So you're kind of familiar with the technology. Simply, when you go on there and make the Skype request, Greg Banks 3, I will accept you. Sort of like, accepting a friend on Facebook. We accept your request and then give you the ability from your computer or even your smartphone to call us on Skype. And it sounds like you're sitting in the studio. We utilize the Skype technology all the time. Matter of fact, we use it Monday nights. We'll see how that happens, okay? So we opened up our Skype, and basically, the way Skype works is you could be sitting at your home or sitting in your car and call us up, and it sounds pristine, as if you are sitting right in the studio. And that's what's cool about Skype. We'll have some live broadcasts, matter of fact, coming up. We're going to broadcast live during Mayfest. Write that on your calendar. April 30th, Mayfest, downtown Huntington. All kinds of vendors, crafts, art, you name it, we've got it. And we'll be talking with Linda DeArmond every Friday up until we have Mayfest this year in downtown Huntington. That's Saturday, April 30th. But our live broadcast, by the way, is from the window at the Huntington County Drop-In Center right there at 512 Washington Street. We'll be in the window, and we'll have our guest with us. If you want to stop by and just go on the air with us online so you can say hi to maybe your family from around the country, they can tune in. We'll be talking about Mayfest that whole day, bringing on some guests, interviewing some of the principals, some of the vendors. We'll be talking about some of the items you can pick up while you're in town for that, and just basically promoting Mayfest all day long from 9 to 5 on Saturday, April 30th. And that's the date of this year's Mayfest in downtown Huntington. So keep that in mind, because we can go anywhere, and we can go live via Skype. We can go live. We have the technology is there, folks. I'm telling you, what's kind of cool about the technology that we utilize, especially when we do these live shows. One really cool thing is when we go live, we actually have this little card, and it hits a satellite and just goes out over our network. And so I always tell people, look, man, I'm at the age now. I've done that stuff where I've worked in the vineyard for like 35, 40 years for somebody else, and then worked for myself for about 20 years. I'm not trying to work harder. I'm trying to work smarter, man. You know what I mean? You get to a certain age, you do not want to be doing manual labor. You want to kind of lay back, be able to take a nap every once in a while. Oh, I look forward to those days. Or you want to go fishing. So, I'd rather do fishing, man, quite frankly. So I'll do this a couple hours a day, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. Middays in Raystown country. Promote my town, my region. And love to hear from you, though. If you'd like to give us a call this morning, do that at 814-242-4845. That's 814-242-4845. Love to hear from you here on Middays in Raystown Country with Greg Banks. Hey, meanwhile, let me see if I can ring up my friend Judy Block-Jones from SNAP, the Survivors Network of those abused by priests. So not only can we celebrate Spotlight as being the best picture at the Oscars last night, but get updated on what's happening with their organization and taking down some of these priests.
listen to the cops and get in the car? Look what happened to Freddie Gray.
Yeah, and what if they make it all the way to the station?
Mm-hmm.
You remember Sandra Bland?
And let's say they do make it to trial. Mm-hmm. You see where that gets us? Don't you get it, Bo? The system is rigged against us.
Maybe it is, Dre. But I don't want to feel like my kids are living in a world that is so flawed that they can't have any hope.
Oh, so you want to talk about hope, Bo? Obama ran on hope. Remember when he got elected? And we felt like maybe, just maybe, we got out of that bad place and made it to a good place. That the whole country was really ready to turn the corner. You remember that amazing feeling we had during the inauguration? I was sitting right next to you. And we were so proud. And we saw him get out of that limo and walk alongside of it and wave to that crowd. Tell me you weren't terrified when you saw that. Tell me you weren't worried that someone was going to snatch that hope away from us like they always do. That is the real world, Bo. And our children need to know that that's the world that they live in. So let's watch it. Let's see what they're going to say next.
Hey, if you watched the show called Blackish last week, that was Anthony Anderson, who was making a comment about what you have to say to your children these days if you live in the black community. It's sad, but it's true. You know, we've got to have them prepared because of situations in the last year or two with these senseless shootings, people putting their hands up and getting shot. And that's one of the subjects we'll talk about here as we delve into what's happening around the country. Maybe not germane to what happens in Huntington, because for the most part, Huntington County, of course, I grew up here 43 years ago, and I don't know what's changed, but I haven't heard of any incident like that. But there is this fear that people must tell their children not to make any kind of rash moves, how to act. I don't know, days have changed. Things have changed. Life has changed as we know it in America. And so that's one of those issues. And he made a prolific statement on the show last weekend, talking to his wife about sitting down with your children and explaining to them how to actually act when they're out in public. And if a cop indeed stops them, obviously you don't run. Or if you're pulled over in a car, and the fear that, for instance, if you are pulled over, what could happen to you? If a guy's having a bad day, let's say. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I support Blue as much as I can. We've got some really fine people who go out there every day not knowing if they're ever going to make it home to serve and protect. And then we have jerks that we've watched, quite frankly, on national television or even on videos. Of makes you scratch your head like, geez, what was that about? Why did he shoot that guy? And then for some reason, they try to tell us it didn't happen. But we sat there and watched it. That's what's amazing. All right, so anyhow, middays in Raystown Country. Greg Banks, we're here middays from 10 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday. Give us a call, 814-242-4845. I must admit, I stayed up last night. I had to watch the Oscars. I wanted to see if Spotlight was going to win that award for Best Picture. And my God, there was a tear in my eye. Because at that time that they announced that they did indeed win Best Picture, I thought of my good friend, Judy Block-Jones, who has been on the forefront for many years, bringing attention to the abusive priests to these children. And there are many people bearing these scars 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and finally somebody is listening to them. Judy, you had to feel at least vindicated last night in all that you do and all that you've done. Right. Well, Judy, let me do something here. I want to make sure that everybody else can hear you. I can hear you fine. But again, today being our first day on the air, we want to make sure that we have all the equipment set up. And I do have the phone line coming in here, so just give me a second because I will get you on the air. I just need to make some changes here, some equipment. Obviously, yesterday we spent half the day, if not all the day, working in the studio, making sure everything works. And, it's sort of like, yeah, it worked yesterday, but why not today? Judy, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go. Okay, Judy, for the benefit of our listeners, again, tell us a little bit about SNAP, what your organization does, and again, let's go back to last night, how you must have felt once you heard that Spotlight had won the Best Picture award.
Well, first off, SNAP we have over 20,000 members now. We are a support group, a support for each other. I have heard from victims about the Oscars last night, and they were crying with happiness. I was crying with happiness. It's like finally they've been validated. It's like there's finally some hope for justice, and some people are starting to believe. And maybe there's hope that someday no other child will be sexually abused like they were.
Right. You and I go back a couple of years, as you have, we've talked together to one another. There was an incident in Johnstown where I lived for 30 years at Bishop McCord High School. And that was just not one of the incidents in Pennsylvania known to us. And we'll talk about some of the current cases too. But that case in particular kind of boggled my mind because there again was, what was his name? Brother Steve, who had moved from Ohio where there were allegations that he had abused children years ago. And then he ends up in Johnstown and does it again. Do you feel like justice is being done? Where are we falling down here? Is it the church or is it the prosecutors? And is it a matter of limitations, statute of limitations?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a big issue. The problem that's still going on is that the cover-ups are still happening. The church officials, they say that they're being open and transparent, but so many of them really aren't. And that's the thing that survivors they want to change. They need to be held accountable. That's why the statute of limitations needs to be removed, especially for civil actions. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is a survivor can sue, and then his attorney has a discovery period, and they can subpoena documents from the church officials. They can subpoena bishops. They have to testify, and this helps to expose the truth and to hold those who have covered it up accountable. It's for sure that child predators have to be kept away from kids forever. That's a for sure thing.
Right.
But the thing that has to happen even more so than that is to get those who continue to cover it up. They protect the institution before they protect the kids.
Let me ask you.
That's what's going to help.
Yeah, let me ask you something. When you and I spoke in Johnstown, Monsignor Barczyk, I think it was just coming into the diocese there.
Okay.
Okay, here in Huntington, we're in the same diocese, which is at Altoona, Johnstown Diocese. He has recently suspended a couple of priests for allegations that occurred over 20 years ago as he's investigating this. Have you heard anything about these investigations at all? Well,
for one thing, the church officials are not the police. They are not the proper officials to be investigating child sex crimes. That's the other thing that the statute of limitations needs to be removed. It's the police that need to be investigating this. And that blows their mind when the church officials say they are investigating it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They are not the police.
Well, he has aggressively suspended these priests. There was actually one here in Huntington County suspended as well, a well-known priest, for, again, allegations that occurred over 20 years ago. As you mentioned, because of the statute of limitations, is there anything that these district attorneys can do, or are their hands tied? Because I don't see the law changing, and I have not seen the change of statute of limitations since you and I talked 2-3 years ago in Pennsylvania.
Right. It hasn't, but we keep working on it. And when more things come out, like the movie Spotlight, this is huge because this is letting the ordinary people out there, even law enforcement, legislators know, hey, something needs to be done by them. They need to be, we always say outside law enforcement are the ones who need to be taking care of this. We can't assume that the church is going to fix this internally. They can't do it.
When we I'm sorry to cut you off, but when we talk about these cover-ups as we know them, what is the Vatican doing about perhaps expediting some of these cases or cleaning up their own backyard?
They talk a lot. They have not done a thing. There have been a couple of bishops that have resigned. He has accepted their resignation, but has not said why. They need to be fired. They need to be punished. Otherwise, they have no reason to change. They can still get away with doing it the way they do, protecting their image, their power in the institution before they protect kids. As long as they are still able to get away with it, they will.
Mm-hmm. Well, what can we do as citizens to perhaps hurry that process along? Or is it a matter of writing our legislators and getting the word to them that we need to make this change rapidly?
Exactly. That's what the ordinary citizen needs to do, is urge legislators to look at the situation and remove the statute of limitations. It is such a archaic law. For one thing, sex abuse victims, when they're kids, they're sexually abused. They don't have the power and the strength and the know-how to speak up. Sometimes it takes years for victims to speak up. I know of at least 3 men in their 80s. They had just come forward. They hadn't even told their wives. They feel so ashamed. A lot of times they blame themselves, which should not be done, but they end up blaming themselves. But there's various reasons why they don't speak up. And that's why the statute of limitations is just so absurd. It needs to be removed.
We have Judy Block-Jones of SNAP, the organization that, of course, is protesting and obviously very active in getting some of these priests off the streets, the ones who have abused children. Now, as Judy just mentioned, some of these people are in their 70s and 80s now, and because of the statute of limitations, obviously you can't move forward in a court case, but they can file civil cases. Now, Judy, share with us, if you will, for those that didn't listen to my show in Johnstown, and we have a new audience here at Middays in Raystown Country. Share with us maybe something personal and how the perception was back in the 50s and 60s when you and I grew up, when we would go to our parents and say that allegedly a priest touched one of us. What kind of reaction did you get in your family, or what do you know about what happened in your neighborhood or family when that happened back then?
Well, I had a good example. My brother was sexually abused by our longtime parish priest where I grew up in Ohio. And my mom, she's dead now, but when she was still alive, she actually blamed her son over the 49-year-old priest. And I look at that and I think it's the mindset, because I was raised very strict Catholic. I'm the oldest of 11 kids. And my mother did everything Catholic. Well, if she was to accept that they were wrong about something or did something so horrible, it would have wiped out her whole life. That's the only conclusion I can come up with.
So
I don't understand it otherwise.
So you think your mom felt that had that information got out, and matter of fact, she didn't believe your brother from the get-go, but had that information got out, she would have been excommunicated, basically, from the church, right?
I don't know. I don't know about that. It's weird, the mindset. At least the mindset is beginning to change a little.
Right.
But there still are people out there. There's people out there that they can't believe it.
And I want people to understand, we are not beating up on the Catholic Church by any means. This happens, because when we talk about SNAP, and even though the acronym is Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, you also take up the arms when it comes to school teachers, daycare, maybe athletic coaches. I mean, it could be anybody when it comes to that.
And especially institutional. Any
Right.
sex abuse within institutional.
Right. Well, what kind of inroads are we making now? I see where Mark Ruffalo, one of the actors in Spotlight, is joining the protests from time to time, and he's speaking up now as a result of the motion picture.
In fact, yesterday it was such a neat surprise. They, Barbara Blaine, she's the founder of SNAP, and she was in L.A. They were leafleting, handing out flyers at the cathedral in L.A. because we're pushing to get the bishops to post on their websites and release the names of all credibly accused clergy in their diocese, in any of the dioceses. And Mark Ruffalo and Tom McCarthy and Josh Singer, they all three were there with them at the press event and handing out flyers. It was so amazing. I said, we stood in rain and everything, but I've done it all by myself to hold a press event or a protest about something in front of cathedrals or chancery offices, sometimes all by myself. So it's like, it's just so different than it's been from years ago. It's like really feels good for victims.
Well, again, I know that you have, even in Johnstown, that situation there, I believe you frequented, or somebody came from SNAP to Johnstown and actually stood in the rain and the cold weather. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Gabardinian, was he the lawyer out of Boston that came down to pursue that case? I think it was Michael, who was very instrumental in getting some of those cases to court, at least Mitchell, if not several. That's Mitchell, okay. So how's that working now? Are we seeing more and more cases or fewer cases? How's the perception of what's happening now? Do you feel maybe a little bit better that the process is moving along as opposed to when we spoke last about a year ago?
Do you mean about...
Well, I mean about some of these cases, like, for instance, the McCourt case, it basically wrapped up. I don't know if anybody ever got paid there because Father Steve killed himself, so that pretty much ended that whole mystery.
Right. I don't know. I don't know that they've gotten any settlement yet. The thing that was able to happen there is because there were so many victims.
Right.
I think Stephen Baker, Brother Baker,
yes.
They have, they learned that there's like 80 victims now from that one clergy. That's what's helped for them to file a suit. But really, the statute of limitations is stopping a lot of it.
Right.
So I don't know where that stands right now.
Well, to the best of your knowledge, was that Youngstown case ever taken care of? Did those kids ever get compensated for that? And again, it goes back to, it's not about the money in many instances.
Right.
These kids are psychologically damaged for the rest of their lives, and they're not even kids.
Right.
These people are now in their 50s and 60s, and as you mentioned, even 80s in many cases.
Yes.
Wow.
In Youngstown, that's settled, and that's what brought the whole thing to the out in the news, and that gave Mitchell Garabedian, there were like 11 victims.
Right.
And
right.
He the statute of limitations had stopped it, but he managed to make this happen. And what that does is then he can make it public. He made Brother Baker's name public.
Right, he did.
Well, that's when all the other victims said, "Oh my God, I'm not the only one." So that's when all the other ones then came forward and realized, they're not alone. So that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing about filing suits is to expose the truth. They want the truth to be exposed. No more keeping these priests' names secret, moving them around in different places. That's the part that they want to get stopped.
And that seems to be the protocol in many instances, that these priests just end up somewhere else, and that really, is crazy.
They need to be kept in a secure treatment center.
Yeah. Wow.
They can never be with kids.
We had a prolific case not too many miles from here in Huntington. Geographically, Judy, I know you're in Chicago, but we are close to Penn State University, where Jerry Sandusky, that whole case boggles my mind to this day. But as you said, once one person came out and made this allegation, there were many others who then found strength to also come forward and say, you know what?
Exactly.
That happened to me as well. And it wasn't about the money. It's about the shame. It's, these people have to go through counseling probably the rest of their lives over these molestation allegations. So having said that, what's in the future for SNAP? What are you working on now? What do you plan on doing here, say in the next month or two? What are you guys working on?
Well, that's funny. One thing that we're working on is, in fact, this past weekend, SNAP leaders in different areas of the U.S. did press events, and they're urging the bishops to release the names of credibly accused clergy. The church claims there's over 6,000. We only know from bishopaccountability.org website, that group has documented 4,000, and those are the only ones that have been made public. So there's over 2,000, at least according to the church officials, say there's over 2,000 that the names aren't even known. And that's why right now we're pushing the bishops to make those names public. 30 dioceses have already done that, and we want the others to do it too. Why keep their names secret? Exactly.
Well, Judy, I really appreciate you joining me, especially this day after quite a big victory.
Thank you.
With Spotlight.
I can tell you that the victims that I've talked to already and even messaged are filled with hope because of the Spotlight movie. It's a big deal for them.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because you know what? I saw you on Facebook, probably 6 months ago, when you were getting ready to go see the film with other SNAP members or by yourself. And you know, what a motion picture and what a message. That is current. Matter of fact, this is a message that goes back probably 50, 60 years, but we bring it to the forefront today. Mm-hmm. And because of your proactivity and folks like you from SNAP, we thank you and we wish you the best in the future. And God bless you, Judy. Just keep up the great work.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Judy Block-Jones joining us here on Middays in Raystown Country with Greg Banks. Hey, by the way, we're on the air weekdays from 10 to noon. And if you'd like to call us up, give us a buzz, 814-242-4845. That's 242-4845. We're here in Huntington County. And it's always a pleasure to talk with Judy Block-Jones of SNAP, the Survivors Network of those abused by priests. We have more conversations like that coming up throughout the next couple of weeks, but more importantly, we also want to keep it on the light side. We don't always want to get involved in those political issues or socioeconomic or social issues. We do have a light moment from time to time. Hey, stick around. We've got more coming up next here on Middays in Raystown Country. This is the airnetwork.net, and welcome to Middays in Raystown Country with Greg Banks. We're here Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon, and there's a myriad of subjects that we'd like to get to today. By the way, thank you to Judy Block-Jones from Chicago, who called in this morning to talk to us a little bit about her organization known as SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. She was a guest on my show out of Johnstown, where we did this show originally. We are bringing it home. We left here back in 74, I think it was, to go into radio full-time in the Altoona market. And, of course, I could tell you where we traversed, but it's not that important. We're back home after 43 years, and it is a good platform that we can use. I want to say thank you to my good friend Jeff Speck, who called in and encouraged us a little bit today. Jeff, by the way, can be heard weekday afternoons from 3 to 7 on the way home on Honey 103.5. Check that out if you're into those cartoons. That's what I call them, because, you know, you got to have music to groove to on the way home. Man, especially after a hard day at work. Well, Jeff is the guy that provides that to you. Meanwhile, here on the airnetwork.net, we have graciously gotten with some people in the area and just trying to find out what it is they're into. And again, being today that this is the launch of the show, we want you to know that there are some things going on in the area. For instance, we had mentioned just briefly Mayfest. And for those of you that don't know anything about Mayfest, and why wouldn't you? It's just a spectacular event held every year just prior to May, actually. This year's event is coming up Saturday, April 30th from 9 to 5, downtown Huntington. It's family friendly. It's like a block party, if you will. You know, it's likened to, if you've ever gone to State College for the Central Pennsylvania Arts Festival, yeah, it's like all jammed into one day in downtown Huntington. Linda DeArmond does such a beautiful job with that. She's been doing this for years, getting help from, you know, the community, getting everybody involved. They've got live music. Oh, they've got a whole bunch of vendors, over 150 vendors, food, crafts, you name it. They've got it with local organizations. They'll have events throughout the day. Period costuming. Now, this is cool. I have a brochure here. Now, you can't see this, but it's got Linda and I believe her husband Leonard on it. And she's wearing this, well, this period costume from, I believe, I don't know if that's from the 1600s, 1700s, Linda, but it's gorgeous. And so you'll see people throughout the area walking throughout downtown Huntington on Saturday, April 30th, you know, just basically, hey, showing off. But showing what we have as a community. Now, what's cool is this year, the Air Network is going to really help them promote it. We're going to do a live broadcast from 9 to 5 in downtown Huntington. Right there at 512 Washington Street. We'll be in the window. And we're inviting people just to stop by and chat with us. You know, we just want them to come over, hang out with us for the day. I'll throw some headsets on you, or if you want a microphone, you'll have your very own microphone, and I'll just be like, hey, Bob, how you been doing? I haven't seen you for 40 years. You look old. You look tired. Take a rest. Because his wife is probably going to have him walking throughout all of downtown Huntington on April 30th because it's Mayfest. You know, so this way he'll have a chance to sit down with me and have some coffee, and we'll talk about whatever's happening. But that's what we'll be doing. We'll be live downtown from 9 to 5. You don't want to miss it. All kinds of events, rain or shine. Oh, we're expecting maybe 10,000 people. It's like a big block party. That's Mayfest coming up Saturday, April 30th, 9 to 5. Friendly to the families. Oh, and it's like a huge block party. We'll be talking more about that upcoming event soon. Hey, you ever think about, oh, you've seen something in the sky, and you thought to yourself, what the hell is that? And then you do a little research, and you think, that might have been a UFO. And you're like, oh no, did I just see this? Or is it? Well, listen, let me tell you about a friend of mine. He's really into this thing. Yeah, he's into Mutual UFO Network, which is MUFON, or MUFON for short, and I'll get corrected on that. But MUFON is this organization where they actually have you go out and they train you how to investigate UFO sightings. Now, you say to yourself, oh, hey, I've never seen anything that I couldn't identify. But I know for a fact that there are people in Huntington County who have sighted some things. They've seen some things in the sky. We're such a rural area. So you could be out at the lake some night and see something that just out of the corner of your eye, just doesn't seem right. Well, you should report it. So let me send you the MUFON.com. That's MUFON, MUF like Frank, ON like Nancy.com, and just click on Get Involved. You'll see that tab there, Get Involved, and then, of course, you can get together, become a field investigator. My good friend Fred, he's involved in this, and he's really, he's hot on this thing. He's like, dude. Now, I know, years ago, I talked to a guy out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Just so happens, I think it was Stan Green, and I can't be sure of his name, but we interviewed him as well. And there have been sightings of Bigfoot. There have been sightings of UFO. He seems to be really involved in this thing for the last 40 years. I'm talking about this Stan guy. And if you go to YouTube and I give you his name, you'll be able to go in and look at some of these cases. But MUFON's a little bit different. They have a protocol in which they do investigate. They do talk to some of the people that have seen some of these sightings, whether it might be unidentified to you. They can kind of always justify. They go in there and they just say, hey, listen, okay, this is what you saw that night. Because they kind of go, and they check with the government. They check with, like, the local authorities. They do their own investigation. Well, they've got some events coming up as well. So we'll tell you more about MUFON coming up soon. But for yourself, just check it out. MUFON.com is where you'll want to be when it comes to identifying some of these unidentified flying objects. Middays in Raystown country. It is certainly my pleasure to be back home, Greg Banks, where it all began. And I must admit, it began at Juniata College on a little closed-circuit radio station. In other words, the station wasn't even on the air, but you could get it in the dormitories. You could get it in the dining hall. I think a lot of us who aspired to be radio announcers somehow or other hung out at either the college or even at WHUN at some given time. And that's how we learned our trade. Having said that, my start was very humbly in the basement of the Penalta Hotel for WRTA, who, by the way, many of you may remember Tom Casey, the weather guy at Channel 10. He was my first boss. And Casey gave me that gig. I think I started out weekends doing church programs and then, just playing the tapes. And then eventually you work into your own air shift. And the next thing I know, I'm in the business for a couple of years, and then I'm at WFBG Radio working for Dick DeAndre. You remember the old bandstand guy from back in the 50s and 60s? Yeah, Dick was my boss there, and I spent many years there before moving on to a couple of other radio stations, and then eventually Channel 10, where I became the weekend sportscaster, and then eventually took over for Big John Riley once he had an aneurysm back in the early 80s. But having said that, it's been quite an experience, and it continues to some extent with this new platform on the airnetwork.net. Now, you can go into our website, check out some of the stories. You'll see sports stories there. You'll see what's happening locally, regionally. We'll try to keep that updated. If you'd like to send us an email with your upcoming event, do that by sending us an email at greg@theairnetwork.net. That's greg@theairnetwork.net. Hey, by the way, yesterday, kudos to the Huntington Fire Company. Out at McConnellstown yesterday, they had the chicken barbecue. Oh, man, I die for that chicken. Well, guess what? If you waited too long, it was all gone within an hour and a half. They were even surprised. I don't know how many chickens they barbecued with all the other food that they had. For $8, you couldn't beat the deal, and there were no seconds yesterday. But what happened was, from what I understand, is once they started selling this, and they were supposed to begin around 11 o'clock, mind you, but they actually started around 10:30. It was pretty much gone by 12. So that was a great fundraiser for them. So congratulations and best of luck in the future to the Huntington Fire Company. And by the way, if you've not been around lately or you're outside of the area, the Huntington Fire Company, if you remember, we had the Uptown Fire Company, the Downtown Fire Company, we had Smithfield, and we had McConnellstown, we had Oneida Township coming out 26. Well, they have pretty much consolidated Huntington, Uptown, and Downtown, McConnellstown, and Oneida Township, and I may be forgetting somebody, but Smithfield pretty much stands by themselves, and the rest of them have come together and consolidated, as it were, as you most do in business as you grow and become more efficient. And so they're one of the best fire departments in the area, if not the best. So congratulations to them. If you can support your fire company in anything they do, by all means do that. And I hope to get information from them on their upcoming events. Just email me, greg@theairnetwork.net. That's as simple as that. Hey, the other day I was downtown, as I mentioned, just kind of like browsing, seeing what shops are in and out of there. And, you know, I hope to get back down there again because I volunteer with the drop-in center right there at Washington Street. And I go down and I work with some of the consumers. Matter of fact, we had a trip to the library on Friday. I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. But in addition to that, we went to the community center last Monday. And I want to thank Teresa, who is the new director down there. Best of luck to her. And also Ted Arndt, my good friend. He was sort of like a surrogate father to many of us for years. That guy just doesn't know how he's impacted many lives, and I tell him that all the time. But he was sort of like the surrogate father that many of us had coming up. And you know what? He never seems to age. We all seem to get older, but Ted doesn't. He's probably been down there 100 years, and I hope he has 100 more. But we went to the community center last Monday, and we got a chance to play some basketball. There were probably 10 or 15 of us. We were kind of rusty, but God love the folks at the center. You know, they need your support. You know, maybe they can buy some extra books, maybe buy some extra computers or basketballs. I know we donated $500 around Christmas to them in a pie sale we had at the Huntington County Drop-In Center. So we're going to be taking our consumers down there from time to time and playing around, but I got to say, I had a lot of fun. And what's really cool is some of these people like never get a chance to socialize, and they got out on Monday and they came out of their shells. And we've got some future Steph Currys involved in that group. Matter of fact, God love her Betty. She's 84 years old. We got her to walk with her walker out on the basketball court and shoot a couple of hoops. She couldn't thank us enough. She said she had so much fun. So keep in mind, the Huntington Community Center, I believe Teresa was telling me, is open to the public every evening, 6 to 9 p.m. They also do some roller skating. I don't know if we're that bold that we want to roller skate next time we go down there or not. I'll try anything once. But anyhow, thank you to Teresa and Ted Arndt. But I was downtown, and I just happened to stop into a new store that opened up. And she tells me it's not a new store, but a new location there on Washington Street. That's Cloud Minders. Have you been in there? Oh, man, if you're planning a party, you've got to go see Carol. I'm serious. They're open Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., actually 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Make a note of that, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday, Cloud Minders, right there on Washington Street. So if you're planning a party, you know, you need some plates, you need napkins, you need stuff to coordinate, you know, this party and make everybody think, damn, you know how to throw a party. Well, Carol can take care of you when it comes to balloons and even invitations. So check out their, of course, new fragrant candle line, which I had to try out for myself, and it smells delicious. I could probably eat one of those candles, but I won't. And they come in solids and a variety of fragrances. She also has those candy bouquets. Now, here's how you get some points. Ask Carol when you go down to Cloud Minders if she could show you how to make a candy bouquet using a coffee cup and the delicious candies that she puts in that's going to get you some points. Seriously, if you work at the hospital, you work at the college, or you work at a downtown store, maybe even if you work at Pizza Hut, and you want to impress either your girl or maybe your boss, get her a candy bouquet and leave it up to Carol. Party gears for kids of all ages. I mean, they've got stuff for everybody. Check them out. That's Cloud Minders in downtown Huntington, right there on Washington Street. I think that was the old Harmony bookstore, they called it, or the Christian bookstore. Stop down there. Give them a call, 643-5121. That's 643-5121. And also, you can hit them up on Cloud Minders on their Facebook page, all right? Check them out. That's Cloud Minders, open 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday in downtown Huntington. All right, there's a couple of other things we need to get taken care of. And as I mentioned, this being our first day, our maiden voyage, if you will, of middays in Raystown country, we need you to give us a call and let us know if you're listening. Now, hopefully you're listening at your job. You got the earbuds in. Your boss isn't going to get upset with you listening. I know that it'd be kind of cool to say, well, you know, he's got his laptop on and the whole office is listening. But we know it's not that way, because I don't think I would allow my employees to do that. But listen, if you're doing it today, by all means, give us a call, 814-242-4845. That's 242-4845. I don't think we'll ever run out of anything to talk about, but we're kind of navigating our way around the first day. It's sort of like, you know, the first day of school when you get there, you know, you got these clean jeans and, oh, you know, you've seen your friends for the first time and you're just so excited. Well, that's how we are here. Stick around. Middays in Raystown Country, live on the airnetwork.net. Welcome to it, the maiden voyage with Greg Banks, back home after how many years? Okay, I keep saying 43. It's probably more like 45, but nonetheless, if you've not joined us on the Air Network, we've got some things that have been going on for the last few years. We started out in the Johnstown region, if you will, with live sporting events. We not only did high school events for 7 different school districts, going live, pristine audio, just on the internet or your mobile phone, or even in your cars if you're hooked up to TuneIn or whatever you have as far as your apps are involved. Now they're selling these cars. They've got all kinds. They don't even have knobs on them, man. You pretty much don't even have to drive them, although keep your hands on the wheels. Having said that, We started out back about, 5 years ago? Oh, yeah, we got the bunch of guys together. This is basically how this thing worked. Got together at Fat Daddy's up in Altoona. It's this famous barbecue place. We would meet there because we had guys coming in from Williamsport, State College, Altoona, Johnstown. So we'd meet in the central location and have ribs and beer. And we talked about the geeks and the geezers. Now, I was a geezer who had some money and said, well, why don't we build this platform where we could do live broadcast from anywhere in the world? Like if I'm in Jamaica, I could broadcast live, okay? How can we do that? Well, the geeks told us how to do it, and they put it together for us, and we've been running ever since. And since then, a couple of the compatriots of mine in business went on and, developed their own websites, and they do live broadcasting from all over the world. My friend Sam Jordan, who owns radio stations now in Erie and in the northern tier of Pennsylvania, was just in Michigan yesterday. Matter of fact, for the weekend, he called me, doing live hockey. And I'm not so good at that hockey thing, although Dave Shannon, the guy that joins us on Sports Talk Monday nights at 7, he can do hockey. So if Huntington gets a hockey team, we'll be ready to go. But having said that, we did do some Bearcat sports since we came down here in August. We're still getting reacclimated to the area, running into some dear old friends. And that's a cool thing. Although my memory fails me from time to time, I may not recognize your face, but if you tell me your name, it'll take me back to the 70s. Which were kind of they were some tumultuous times. And tomorrow maybe we'll spend a little bit of time. We'll talk about the changes that have been made over these 40 years. You know, as our bodies change and maybe our perspective on life changes. Well, so has the area. You know, at one time, let's say Johnstown. We knew that Johnstown was a bastion for the steel industry. Well, you know, when the steel industry left in the late 70s, well, quite frankly, Johnstown became a distressed city. They lost, probably over 80,000 people. There might be 10,000 homeowners in Johnstown now, although there's 20,000 people in proper Johnstown, but only 10,000 homeowners. And situation as I left it in August, it's even more exasperated because of the fact that now everybody has to go into a new sewage line. You've got to pay for that. And quite frankly, these elderly people, they can't afford it. They've got to make a choice. Am I going to buy my medication, eat, or am I going to try to spend $5,000-$6,000 getting into a sewage so they move out? They leave the houses abandoned. It's a deplorable situation. They've been in a distress situation now 20 years. Well, the original thought was we'll go into distress, get ourselves together, and get out within 5. They've been on it 20. It's a government handout. We'll talk about that, too, and how it has changed, basically, the economics, the face of a city. Don't know if that's happening in Huntington, but if you know of something happening in Huntington County, and that includes Three Springs, Orbezonia, Saltillo, even Saxton, let us know about it. Call us up, 814-242-4845. Love to hear your opinion. Love to hear what your vision is for the county. Because can we totally rely on the lake, for instance? No, it has brought us business. We know that, but what about our downtown? What about downtown Mount Union? How do we make that grow? You know, there's some good things happening in Mount Union. We need to talk about that as well. So call us 242-4845 Monday through Friday from 10 to noon. Don't forget rebroadcasts from 2 to 4 and 10 to midnight every day on the airnetwork.net. Okay, that's Monday through Friday. If you want to Skype us, you can do that. GBanks3, that's GBanks3. If you use the old-fashioned email, got that too. Just hit me up at greg@theairnetwork.net. That's greg@theairnetwork.net. I got a million things I'd love to talk about. You know, we probably can't talk about it in one day, nor will I try, but I think it was a pretty good day today. You know, again, I want to thank Judy Block-Jones of SNAP, the organization known as SNAP, otherwise known as Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And again, forgive me, we're not beating up on any one institution, or we're not beating up on priests. We know it's happened over 50, 60 years, but it happens every day. Institutionally, there is a systemic thing happening where people just will not leave their hands off of our children. And there is recourse, as Judy mentioned. There are some civil suits being fought every day. And you know, and even though the state of Pennsylvania has a statute of limitation, I believe it's like 6-7 years, and I'll go in and check that out. We want you to be aware of what's happening in your own backyard. So again, join us again tomorrow morning for Middays in Raystown Country. We're here 10 to noon, and we're here for you. We want to talk to you. So call us up, 814-242-4845. Scott Horton, by the way, standing by, Liberty Radio Network. He'll be on the air from noon until 2, and if you've never heard his show on the Air Network, he's a national show. Oh, yeah, he tells it like it is, and what an engaging conversationalist he is. Not only that, cat's intelligent, and he breaks it down so even I can understand it. So join Scott Horton. He's coming up next here on the airnetwork.net. Meanwhile, I hope you have a great day. Kind of cloudy out there, maybe a little rainy, but you know what? You can't ask for a better place to be than here in Huntington County on a Monday. If you got to go to work, man, where better to go to work? No traffic jams. You know, just drive carefully and have a great one, all right? See you back here tomorrow on the airnetwork.net for Middays in Raystown Country, exclusively with yours truly, Greg Banks. So long.